Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 181. Apologies if something weird is going on with the audio, both from a technical and, what would you call that? What's the voice? Like an analog? Talking about my own voice. Yeah, I'm a little bit sick in the throat. I feel fine everywhere else, but I think I got some kind of a throat cold, and I'm a little scratchy down there. But other than that, I feel fine. I'm actually re-recording this episode because I initially recorded this on like Sunday, and I was very frazzled, and you'll find out why. I was very frazzled, and didn't feel like it was all over the place. So I wanted to, I wasn't really happy with uploading that. So I'm going to actually take some time now that my incredibly busy week is sort of done, and redo, go over the same topics, hopefully in a little more clearly in my mind. I guess I can start with my week. I will mention that we had no questions last time, so if you'd like to leave a question, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, and I will definitely get to it next time. Other than that, something very interesting happened to me. Several interesting things happened to me for the purposes of this podcast. The first one was on Saturday. So you might remember, like 4-ish years ago, I made a video on this game called Space War, about the second game, basically the second game ever made, to my knowledge. Sort of, unless you want to count stuff from the Play-Doh. It's on most lists. It's going to be the second game ever made, video game, and in the process of making that video, I discovered a neat little fact, which is that it was also the center of the first ever video game tournament held in 1978 in Stanford's AI labs, which are not actually on the main campus. They were some off-site building in like the middle of the hills, not around anything. It was kind of funny. It doesn't actually exist anymore. So I sent an email to the director of Stanford's current AI labs, at least director at the time. He's changed position. It's changed positions since then. And I asked if they had any extra materials on hand, like, photographs or maybe a school newspaper, something like that, just to use as a primary source-ish document for my video. He got back to me and said that, sorry, we don't have anything that isn't already publicly out there. Thankfully, there was a very detailed Rolling Stone article at the time that I could draw from, but they didn't have anything extra. But he did CC the winner of the competition, a man named Bruce Baumgart. So the first ever video game champion, Bruce Baumgart. And that was kind of it. There were no further communications. And maybe there should have been on my end. But this was back when I was making like weekly or bi-monthly videos, something like that. So I just kind of shrugged and moved on. Now, about like 2 weeks ago, I suddenly get an email from someone named Bruce Baumgart. And the name sounded familiar, and I realized after searching that he was the guy who was only ever CC'd on the email from 4 years ago. And he was inviting me to the reunion of the Stanford AI Labs. They were having a reunion event at a Chinese banquet. And I said, well, I'm a little surprised, but I'm flattered. Consider this my RSVP. So on Saturday, I showed up, and so I don't really think that when he invited me, he was really aware of who I was. Apparently, it was in his email, he said he was recommended by the head of that department that I had initially emailed. And then later I talked to that department head. That guy was there. And I said, thank you for recommending me to Bruce to be invited here. And he said, well, recommendation is a bit loose of a way to put it. And I was like, okay. So I've kind of ended up here by total chance. And no one really knew anything about me or what I did or even how old I am. In fact, I was looking through some pictures of their previous reunions. The last one was 2015, so it was like 10 years ago. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to be like the youngest person here by at least 50 years. Now, that wasn't actually true. There were some grandchildren there. Like one or two. So I was not the youngest person. There was also a couple people who were maybe around my parents' age who were there, but who had been invited for one reason or another. I don't know why. Everyone was there. But I would say the evening it was really interesting. It was a great experience. So the thing is that if you show up to an event like this, which is a bunch of people who worked in researching science and technology in Silicon Valley in the 1970s and 80s, you're just going to run into like the guy who invented computers kind of thing. So I sat next to, I don't quite remember everyone's full name. And also just, I don't know, for privacy, I guess, because these aren't particularly public people, even though many of them have a lot of really important contributions to computing. I sat next to one of the guys who developed Siri. He was really cool. He was a little bit younger, and he was really good at engaging with me about like kind of bridging the gap with between like the tech world and YouTube and stuff like that. He was really cool. Had a lot of interesting stuff to share. I also sat with Don Woods, who was one of the original co-creators of Adventure, aka Colossal Cave Adventure, aka Zork, which is a game that I literally played when I was a kid, because I've always been into retro games. And if you don't know, one of the, not like first text adventures, not one of the first ones, but one of the most advanced, and this might sound funny if you haven't like kind of played many of them, best playing. Zork was a extremely easy to get into text adventure. And it's real. I think even today, it's still pretty cool to go back and play. And you can take someone, as long as you're willing to kind of engage with it and just be like, okay, it's just a text interface. I'm just writing commands into a command line. It's really fascinating, and it does spark a lot of... It's just like a text adventure where you are trying to solve a series of puzzles, essentially. And in this kind of mysterious environment, you're just kind of dropped into. I really like the aspect of filling in the blanks with your mind. I should do a video on text adventures someday. They're very cool, and Adventure, what eventually became Zork, was a big deal in like the computer gaming and like computer hobbyist world back then. It was like, oh shit, this is really new. This is like a real experience that is unique to it was very groundbreaking. Yes, his name is Don Woods. He was really cool. I appreciated the fact that sometimes I'm prepared when I go into situations with people who are, let's say, like 40 plus, for them to not really understand or necessarily like respect what I do. But I found that a lot of people there were actually really excited and were really interested in what I do, and I think gave me a nice amount of respect, which was appreciated. Obviously, I am so much younger than them, and I have so much less experience to draw on. I have no prior connections to any of these people, and I have this like fake internet job. But everyone that I met was very cool, and I'm sure not everybody was like super into the YouTube world, but they were really willing to engage with me, and I appreciated that a lot. Everybody was very, very polite. It was really neat. The Siri guy, his name was Tom, oh God, I'm really bad with names. Puget, I believe. He was actually telling me about the development, because obviously, they were the Stanford AI Labs was created to research the concept of artificial intelligence, different ways to approach what that was and implement it, right? So he was telling me that now it's a big, with the large language models and the chat GPTs, and there was a lot of talk about that over dinner. And actually, they were very interested to know how my generation, the Gen Zers, were responding and reacting to it, both from like an artistic standpoint, as well as, the job market and stuff like that. To which my answer was, a lot of us are just kind of waiting to see what happens. It's not much that we can do to control it. Or you want to be, it's either, what I find is either people going, okay, well, let's see how bad it gets. Or you're the guy who's my age, and you're like, yeah, we're going to displace all the jobs, we're going to automate everything, and I'm going to own the AI. He was telling me that the origin of the modern large language model structure for these AI, systems, these implementations, projects, everything, actually was a result of Google's Translate team. They were basically trying to come up with a more robust autocomplete feature for the purposes of getting better, faster, more accurate translations. And what they ended up developing was this big library of language and I think it was called like token prediction, I believe, which was just autocomplete and next word prediction, essentially. And it turns out that was applicable to way more things than just translation. And Google, being Google and having a copy of the entire internet practically in some form, even if it's just textual, was able to spin that off into something like sort of like a search engine, which was interesting. He actually had I suppose a negative impression of where the industry was going, where he said that it kind of seemed like it's not really, the hallucinations are a big problem to the extent where you can't, in his words, his take was that you can't really throw money at it. It's a problem that you can't really throw money at, and technologically a lot of the stuff that is quote unquote new is actually just previous research that is now being like dug up again and used in the new technology of the new large language stuff. So that was pretty interesting. I met a lot of cool people besides just those two guys. I ate with them a fucking 8-course Chinese meal. It was a lot of seafood. I like seafood, I used to like it more, but I still enjoy it. Man, 8 courses is a little much for me. I was like, okay, yeah, this is a good stopping point. Once we got to the 8th course, and you're not eating a whole lot. It's like they kind of drop it off for the table, and then you take some for yourself. But once I got to the eighth course, I was thinking, okay, this is enough. This is enough for me. I think any more and I'm actually going to be sick. I met the guy who invented digital typesetting, which was like, oh, cool. Just like, yeah, very casual. just people. I didn't meet him, but it was the first. There was a guy there who was the first person to trade stocks on a computer in 1980, which was pretty interesting. the room was just like full of knowledge. And again, a lot of these people are not public figures. They're not like Steve Jobs rock stars. But so like they aren't just, you know, being invited to conventions and giving interviews and stuff. So this is, you know, not to get morbid, but they're pretty up there in age. And being able to kind of rub elbows and talk to them a little bit. And just like, oh, you did that. You did that. Huh. How was that like? You know, what was it like doing computing back then? How did you even get into computers? It was pretty interesting. A lot of people had like family members who had basically like reasons for why there would be a computer nearby. Don Woods explained to me that his father was an electrical engineer. And so was always fixing up computers, like early computers. And that was how he got into it at not quite the ground level, but in like the 1960s, you know. Actually, funny enough, what Tom was telling me about Siri was that in his opinion, the only reason that Siri even made it to the iPhone was because of Steve Jobs. And that if they had managed, he said that they were originally a third-party company that was working on this like digital voice assistant thing. And they got scooped up by Apple. And that was still while Steve Jobs was alive. And I think like a year and a half to 2 years later, Jobs died. But the Siri team was already working, and he was the only reason they had enough time and money to actually get that to market. So, just kind of text. If it had been the Tim Cook era, they would not have gotten permission to take as much as they did. And what's funny is that it absolutely paid off. There's so many people who bought an iPhone because of Siri. I remember being a kid when, you know, that came out when I was in middle school, just about. And just like sitting and asking Siri stuff, and everyone would just crowd around and be like, let's ask this. What did she say to that? It was such a selling point. It was a system seller, as we'd say. And that was really fascinating. He had a lot of criticism for Apple's modern stagnation in terms of like big system selling features like that they're not going to throw money around to projects like Siri nowadays, which was interesting. He doesn't work there. He works for a different project, which I don't want to really go into detail on, but it sounded pretty cool. What was interesting was how many people there were very cognizant of the ethical implications of AI, especially in the job market. Like, many people who, so, you know, this, so Tom was saying he's working on a project that, I'll say it has to do with music, but the music itself is composed by human hands. It's just other aspects of the experience are like managed and mixed by the AI, by this AI program that they're making. And he was kind of like very intent on making sure that was clear. That was like, no, the music is all human, because that's like how you get quality. It's just other things that the AI is useful for that you couldn't, you know, that either you'd have to do manually, and just taking that, you know, curtailing the experience for you. Don Woods, I feel weird being on a first name basis, but his wife is a graphic artist. There's construction going outside my home. You might hear buzz song that's been going on for like a week. It's cool. His wife is a graphic artist, and she has been, you know, telling him about how her job is probably safe because she's so senior and her skill set is so high. But a lot of the entry-level jobs for artists there's a real threat to them getting wiped out, and then you kind of pull up the ladder and remove the entry level stuff. And a lot of people were people were interested, people were excited about it in many ways. But that room was interesting because of how many people with so much experience and so much perspective on the technology also had a lot of apprehension about it, which I think is fascinating because you don't see that from the people who are trying to get rich off of AI. Go figure. I'm going to close my window real quick. So I was there a couple hours. I ate a lot. I met a lot of interesting people. Obviously my YouTube channel came up. It was funny because I was wearing a name tag. So I think that's why people were interested. I think a lot of people assumed I was somebody's grandson or daughter, according to the YouTube comments. But I had a name tag, which I don't think you got if you were a +1. So there was like who are you? And I would kind of have to pull my hair to the side a little bit to make it visible. And I'm Tygan. They go, Tygan Moon. It was weird to pick up a name tag that said Tygan Moon. It shouldn't be. Tygan Moon to me doesn't, I don't know. I'm not used, despite the fact that I've been doing the Cellar for so long at this point. Tygan Moon still, it feels weird to be referred to. If you aren't familiar with the lore, that is my real actual name. Moon is my middle name. My full name is Tygan Moon Irigoyen, and I figured that if I was going to have some kind of a personal brand for myself after, coming out of high school, there was a lot of stuff that was like, okay, I probably am not going to go through, the college system and all that. So I'm going to need some kind of personal brand for myself. And people struggle enough with Tygan. Throwing the last name Irigoyen at them is just a lot of people's brains turn off. It annoys me because I'm like, Irigoyen is not even a hard name to spell. Or sorry, it's not even a hard name to pronounce. It's just, you just read it for 1 second and you can easily sound it out. You could probably type it. It's spelled almost exactly how it sounds. Irigoyen. So that was, so that was my way of kind of shortening my name to something that was still my name, but was, because Tygan is so it's very memorable. A lot of people don't think it's real, they don't know where it comes from, but that is my name, and it's a lot shorter and snappier and easier to remember. And I think psychologically, going through the battlefield of trying to pronounce the word Tygan and then seeing moon and going, oh, thank God, a word I know, the thing in the sky. I think it helps. I'd like to think that I have at least at the very least a memorable brand throughout all my projects on the Cellar. But it was funny. It still kind of feels like a fake username. I can only imagine what people who go by their gamer tags feel like at professional events. So yeah, it was a really cool event. I'm glad that I got to go. It felt very very special. I as soon as I got the invite, it really felt like something was some thread of fate was spinning together. Something had crossed, and I was like, well, I can't really pass up this opportunity. It's so interesting. And I just kind of went in hoping that something interesting happened. And yeah, several people were pretty interested in my YouTube channel. Some people were actually like, oh, I was curious about maybe uploading YouTube videos myself, which was sort of funny because now I'm the expert in that regard. Yeah, 8,000 subscriber Tygan over here. So that was a very cool experience. And, on the ride back home, I was a little kicking myself because while I was talking to Don Woods, I accidentally confused for a second Colossal Cave Adventure, which, we were just referring to as Adventure at that time. That was the version that he wrote with Adventure for Atari. And I brought up the Easter egg thing, and he looked confused, and I realized, oh, fuck, I was talking about that's the wrong adventure. Fuck. And I feel so embarrassed. I'm like really getting in my head about it. And I'm like back home, I'm in bed, and I'm kind of winding down for the night, but I still feel kind of embarrassed about this. This might sound silly, but I was a little nerding out, and I was like, oh no, I confused this for the other thing. And that ended promptly by a 2-hour episode that occurred outside of my window. So my brother's back home for a few days, and my younger brother, he's back home from college. He just felt like visiting, and he was out drinking with his friends. And they came back home, and they were drinking some more in his room. Of note, one of his friends, I think, just turned 21 and had never really been out drinking. Let's say he had a little too much. He had a lot too much. So cue them outside of my window at 2 a.m., right as I'm starting to really fall asleep. Just... and like just having baby's first really bad fit of alcohol poisoning. And I'm lying there and I'm like, fuck, how long is this gonna go on? It turns out I would not get to sleep until 5 a.m. which was great because I kind of wanted to enjoy my Sunday because it was the one sort of free day that I had before on Monday, Kat and some of our friends were going to a convention. So this whole thing is going on outside my window. You know, he's like, dude, I'm shaking. I'm shaking. You have to call the ambulance. And like, he calls his mom 5 times and she comes to pick him up and he's on the phone and he's like, Mom, I can't breathe. And she's like, you can breathe. You're talking to me right now on the phone. And it was my brother, who is also kind of buzzed, is going, no, dude, it's okay. It's okay. I'm here for you, dude. I'm here for you. And I'm just laying in bed. I'm like, fuck it. So I start doom queuing into Mahjong on my phone. And I lose like 12 hands in a row in the bronze lobby. And I'm like, fuck. I'm going to, dude, if I get roaned one more time, I am going to throw my phone through the fucking wall. And this guy's throwing up outside my window. And I have to listen to like drunk mumbling for 2 hours. So I finally get to sleep. I end up waking up at like 1 p.m. I'm like, fuck, I gotta like record the podcast. Because I want to record it on Sunday to get it out on time. But I gotta be at Kat's house in the evening. Because I'm gonna stay over at her place overnight. So I record it. I'm all frazzled. That's why I'm re-recording it now. Sunday evening, I get to Kat's place, we eat some dinner, and then she's very tired. And the thing about Kat is that she is like a baby. She will fall asleep within 2 minutes of hitting the pillow. One time I asked her, like, I was like, have you ever, when you're like laying in bed and your mind keeps going and you can't really like stop your thoughts, like you're thinking too much and you can't fall asleep? And she was like, no. She has actually never had that happen to her, which I envy in a way. So she falls asleep almost immediately. This is around like 11 or midnight. I am awake until 3 a.m. I cannot fall asleep. And we have to wake up early at like 6. So I get about 3 hours of sleep. I wake up and I'm actually feeling okay. Sans the slightly sore throat that I have, which I don't know if it's just allergies or morning throat or what, but it doesn't really subside. So I'm like, okay. I should mention that for this convention, she and her friends have convinced us, one of our other friends, that we are going to do a group cosplay. I have never cosplayed before, except for Halloween, because they really wanted to do a Steel Ball Run group cosplay. And of course, I'm going to be Gyro. So I spent quite a bit of money on buying a cosplay online, which, to be fair, it came in very high quality. I think it was like handmade to order, and I'm a little shocked at like how nice it actually was. Like the top was actual pleather. Everything was clearly like it was not factory made. It was kind of charming, in fact. A couple people like kind of thought that I made it. I had like little interactions on the side during the convention, and I was like, no, this is actually bought. So kind of thumbs up on that. I might end up selling it because I don't really have a use for a Gyro Zeppeli cosplay, just in the corner of my room right now, and it is quite nice. So we wake up and we start getting ready. She's Lucy. The idea is our other friend was going to be Johnny, Kat was Lucy, and I was Gyro because Kat likes Lucy. And she gets her stuff done, and she's basically a pro compared to me because she does cosplay a lot more often. It's like one of her main hobbies. She is like, well, we have to do makeup for you. I've never had makeup on before. I've never had makeup on. Never once in my life. And so I don't know what's going on. And she's like, well, we have to. I'm like, do I really need makeup? Because she had applied the JoJo lines, as people call them. You know, the very common thing in a lot of JoJo cosplays is they'll draw on the sort of hard lines that Araki uses in a lot of his artwork. Our friend had done that also. But funny enough, when you looked at Gyro, Araki never really does that to Gyro. Gyro has kind of soft features compared to like Johnny or even Lucy. So we decide that we're not really going to do the lines, but she's like, we need to put foundation and stuff on you. So she takes out the foundation thing and she's applying it for me. I did not know that involved like putting up a little pad to my face and her just like punching the shit out of me with it. So she gets all around my face and we look in the mirror and she goes, you look a little burnt. And I'm looking and I kind of put my face up a little closer and I look like I'm in Brownface. And I go, honey, baby, is your foundation for your skin tone? Because Kat's Filipino. So she has like, you know, brown skin. And she goes, oh. So she put me in brown face for a second before we figured that it probably looks better. And she was blaming me like it's my fault that I'm so pale. I mean, it's a little bit my fault that I'm so pale. I think if I even had like a warmer complexion, it would still look weird on me. So we wash all of it off. And then she goes, okay, you just have to put on the lipstick. Because I had also ordered the green lipstick. Because Araki got really into drawing everyone's lips different, like, crazy colors in part 7. And I'm like, I've never put lipstick on before. Should I? And she goes, no, you just draw it on. Just put it on. And I'm like, okay. So I'm looking in the mirror and she's doing something else. She's like fixing her wig or something. And, you know, for my first time, I can't say it went that well. I kind of jokered myself up. I just smeared the fuck out of myself because I don't know how to apply lipstick. I don't have the womanly touch. And so I'm like, babe, I don't think it looks great because it's just smeared all around my mouth. And she goes, just like wash it off a bit. So I wash it off. It still doesn't look great, like around the corners of my mouth. We eventually just end up wiping the whole thing off, and then she just does it for me. the expert. So we go to the convention. It was like one day. We went to Fanime Con in San Jose. Just for the one day on Monday, because that was like the cheapest. That's like the cheapest one to get into. So we palled around. There was like 6 of us, but only the 3 of us were in cosplay. And, you know, I think it was fun, I'll say. I think I'm like, I don't know. I said this a while ago. I think I don't think I'm very interested in going to like big conventions much. Part of it is that I only ever really go to anime conventions. And though I don't like watch anime. I don't watch anime actively. There's like a couple things I keep up with. Obviously JoJo. There's a few anime that I watch. Oh my god, I'm going to talk about god dang Guilty Gear later. I'm going to write that in my notes, actually. I can talk about that now. But I'm walking around. I'm also like, I don't like buying things. I'm not a big consumer. So Kat and her other friend bought a ton of shit. They're really into this game called Love and Deep Space. Weird name. It's like an otome game, which is one of those games that's just like a bunch of beautiful men that's aimed at girls. Sorry, women. Actually, yeah, I hope you're a woman, because fuck, this shit is like practically porn. I am like, damn. I can't say much because I played Ozerlane for like 3 years. But they're really into this game. That's the game that has an in-game period tracker. So that whatever guy you've assigned to be like your home screen like greeter on when you open up the game, if it's like around your period, he'll go, "Hey, are you feeling all right? Can I do anything for you? Just, if you need anything, just let me know." Which is brilliant, by the way. Honestly brilliant. I don't think anything aimed at men could even compare. So they bought like a bunch of merchandise for that and other stuff, but I think the most glaring things was all of the mostly naked men that they were walking out with, which was cool. I'm not gonna act like I don't go to conventions and walk around the artist alley and like ogle the women in the pictures, you know, in the illustrations. But I don't spend money on them, and that's why I'm going to heaven. It was fun enough. It was mostly just wandering around. The only spending money I spent on food. I had an awesome burrito. I had a great burrito. It was actually meant for both of us, for Kat and I, but she ate like 4 bites, and I was like, nice. I'm just gonna eat this whole fucking burrito. So I had a decent time there. I actually got a couple of compliments, which was nice. I can't say that cosplay is like my new favorite hobby, but it was cool, I guess. I don't think I would do it again unless she convinced me to. And I mostly did it for her. I'm just not like a costume guy. Why would I wear a costume when I can just look cool already? He says, showing up in fucking... Dude, I'm literally still wearing the undershirt I was wearing from back then. It's a crossover. It's like one of those pop culture mashup things. It's the cover of Demon Days, the Gorillaz album, except it's Mega Man. And it's called Reploids with a Z and Mega Days. And instead of the Gorillaz members, it's the various Mega Man protagonists. I have gotten multiple compliments on this shirt, which I think is really funny in a cool way. I'm like, yeah, I found it at like a thrift store, and it socially it has served me well. I've gotten like random comments that are like, cool shirt, dude. Like online. It's very funny. Anyway, yeah, conventions. Sure, it's kind of I'm not a big buyer, so I don't have much to do. Also, there were like no panels on the very last day. We did go to the big game room, which is like this massive hall that they have dedicated to games. Most of the events were done. I was kind of pissed they had mahjong tables, but there was only a couple people there, and it was only it was all like full, or it was like 2 people. And it's like they're waiting for multiple people, you know? And so you need exactly 4 people to play Mahjong, which makes it a little bit awkward to just show up randomly. So I couldn't really slide in. Also, it was not an auto table, and I do not know how to shuffle Mahjong tiles myself. But I did end up kind of holding everybody up because I sat down to play a Toho arcade game. It was just a bullet hell Toho game on an arcade machine, and I spent like 10 minutes there because I play Toho games, and everyone was just staring at me waiting for me to be done, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm too good. But I would say it was a fun time. I think the social aspect is probably my favorite part of just hanging out with a bunch of people. I saw some jabronis I don't see too often who showed up, and yeah, I don't know. It was generally a good time. Yeah, that's sort of the end of my week. Although I'm gonna jump into, do I want to jump into the news or something first? I'll jump into the news because I have like one real news thing that I want to talk about, which is the Warhammer Skulls happened. That's the big Warhammer. We're gonna show off all of our games and news for Warhammer games because there are so goddamn many of them. So I wanted to go over some of the highlights and maybe some stuff I would recommend, because there's a lot of Warhammer games that you can get a lot out of, even if you have no idea about the setting or anything. I think they've actually gotten a lot better about that in recent years, of putting out games that you can enjoy as a total layman. But if you are interested in either the genre or the concept or even like the setting, it can be really cool. So first of all, Bolt Gun 2. I enjoyed the first Bolt Gun, like the first half of the game. I think, so the positive points of Bolt Gun were that for the studio's very first boomer shooter style game, because they'd only done like tabletop simulators and strategy games before this, and this was their first attempt at an actual honest to God first-person shooter in a very specific subgenre of them, of this kind of throwback thing. And for that, I think they really nailed the foundations of how the gameplay should feel. Moving, shooting, the weapons, the feedback, both visual and audio. For the most part, some people had their gripes with some of the sound effects. I think they knocked it out of the park. I was very impressed with the fact that this was like their first crack at the concept. It was very promising. And you know what? The game is very fun. There's a lot to like about it. Unfortunately, it kind of runs out of steam like halfway through, and then it turns into TNT evolution. It gets evolution syndrome, as I would call it. Which is to say, you start running into levels that you're 10 minutes in, you're like, this is a nice stopping point for the level. And then it goes on for 20 more minutes. And every level just kind of drags on like 2 to 3 times longer than it has to. And I just felt myself getting really fatigued by how long and how repetitive the levels were feeling. By the time you've hit the halfway mark, you've basically seen everything the game has to offer in terms of like bosses and enemies, and it just kind of keeps getting longer and longer and longer, and it really starts overstaying its welcome. These games, I mean, like, honestly, you go back and play Doom, Quake, Duke 3D, Blood, Shadow Warrior, and those games, I would say, comfortably top out at like maybe a 6 to 8 hour playtime. Your first time through. I I got 13 on Steam. It says I have 13 and a half hours in Bolt Gun, and I made it like 3/4 of the way. It's definitely too long. So for a sequel, I have actually very high hopes for it, that they can take that same foundation of gameplay that feels really good and just pace it out a little better, maybe a little more variety, maybe improve it in a way. Visually, I think it looks awesome. It's got that voxely, the environments are 3D, but it's all in these kind of voxel style geometry with pixel textures. The enemies, of course, are in that like 2D in a 3D and 2D sprites in a 3D environment that I love, kind of complete with that HD 2D. Sorry, what do they call it? Like HD sprite work thing in games like Octopath Traveler, where they've got these really pretty lighting effects and particles and all that to sort of contrast it. I like it. I think it looks really cool. And I mean, the premise of the game is that it's like an old shooter from the 90s that you pick out of your attic that's based on Warhammer, and kind of what it would look like in your mind. And I think in a lot of ways it succeeds. In a couple ways it fails, but it fails in ways that can be easily rectified in a sequel. So I think Bolt Gun 2 is I would look out for that if you're a fan of the genre. Also, a DLC for the original Bolt Gun called Words of Vengeance, which is just it's a typing of the dead for Bolt Gun. So instead of shooting the enemies, you are doing a fast-paced typing test to shoot them before they come at you. Very funny. I can't complain. Is it free? I can actually check if it's free. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, there's a DLC for Bolt Gun a little while ago. I did not play the DLC. Okay, well, I can't see it on Steam. It's probably not out yet. That's why. Warhammer 40k Speed Freaks. This is a car combat game in the style of Twisted Metal, but using orcs, which I think is a great idea. It's been in like an open beta, like an early access thing for a while. It's finally hitting 1.0, and it looks really cool. I've seen a lot of people who thought that it was neat. I think it's a great concept. Warhammer, I find, works really well when you use it. How do I say this? A lot of the best Warhammer stuff, especially in video games, is when you say, do this, but Warhammer. Just take this concept, this genre. Oh my god. But set it in the 40k or the Warhammer Fantasy world. And with all that Warhammer flavor that different factions and races and subdivisions suggest and lend themselves to. So this is like this is the kind of game you sit around going, man, you know what would be cool? A twisted metal game with orcs. That's like what orcs do. But they made that, and you can do that with Warhammer. So it looks cool. I am personally not like a big twisted metal guy, but if you're interested in that, because no one's really making those games, check out Speed Freaks. A sequel, basically, to Rogue Trader, the Owlcat CRPG set in the 40k setting. Rogue Trader is... I heard pretty good things about it. It's obviously still, because it's a CRPG, it's getting DLC and patches for it's going to get it for the next 20 years before the next game comes out, which is partially why I haven't played it. But I heard good things about Rogue Trader. This new one is called Dark Heresy, which means that they're just going back to all the old first edition stuff. If you don't know, the first edition of tabletop Warhammer 40k was called Rogue Trader, and that was back when it was more of a tabletop RPG, because, I mean, the entire Warhammer thing, both fantasy and 40k, spun off from Games Workshop making miniatures for Dungeons and Dragons, and they just started making their own stuff, right, with their own property. So Dark Heresy was, I believe, another, I don't want to say module, but kind of in that vein of like released in that the Rogue Trader era of an expansion or something like that. And it's a setting, I would say it's a part of the setting that is real, that lends itself very well to a CRPG. With Rogue Trader, the whole idea of a rogue trader in universe is that it's a basically merchant who has special privileges in the Imperium to kind of go wherever they want, and there aren't as many restrictions on them. So they can travel to all these worlds and get into all these adventures and meet all these characters, right? With Dark Heresy, you're taking on the role of an Inquisitor as the main character. Inquisitors are part of the Imperium's ecclesiarchy, and their job is essentially to function as magical detectives, trying to root out heresy, because they are the ones who are experts in spotting the warp and stuff like that. People with psychic abilities, or people who might be messing with warp stuff unregulated, which is a big problem because you can literally turn into a portal to hell. And their whole job is to sniff out stuff like that. So there's a very popular series of 40k books called the Eisenhorn series, starring the titular character who is an Inquisitor, and it is just like magical Sherlock Holmes. He's solving mysteries, interacting with different alien species and stuff, and trying to get to the bottom of things. So kind of the usual, still an Imperium-focused storyline, but what's super neat about this, there might be an Eldar companion, which would be cool. It's it makes sense in universe for an Inquisitor to occasionally join forces with the Eldar. If there's any other race that humanity is going to make temporary alliances with, it would probably be the Eldar. But also a Kroot, which I think is really fun. The Kroot are not one of like the main big players of 40k. They are technically under the Tau Empire. The Tau are like an expansionist, imperialist empire who expand and sort of assimilate other cultures into their ranks. The Kroot are one of these. They're the main one that's they're the only one that's also playable on the tabletop. They're like these kind of green. They're like these green guys. I think they're cool. I wish more of the what are they called, like proxy races or whatever were represented, because there's some really cool ones. There's like magical armored bears or something. But the Kroot are cool, and I think making them they're a nice sort of deep pull, I think, as far as you're making a game. What are you gonna include as a main party member? Oh, a fucking Kroot? That's a little neat. That's sort of fun. So yeah, Dark Heresy, that also came alongside a bunch of DLC for Rogue Trader getting announced. And then finally, I believe, basically finally, because the other stuff is just DLC. Remasters for both the original Space Marine game and Dawn of War 1. So Space Marine, they're calling it Master Crafted Edition. The original Space Marine, I've talked about it before. It's a really fun roller coaster game, as I would call it. It is not super deep, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. Actually, to contrast Bolt Gun, it's like a 7 to 8 hour experience, and right as it starts feeling a little thin, like maybe if it goes on for an hour or two more, you're gonna get a little, like, it's really gonna run out of gas. It just ends. It ends right before it starts getting tiresome. It's like perfectly paced. It's just, I call it a roller coaster because it's a lot of, you're getting a full tour of the Space Marine arsenal and kind of what they do and how they act. There's chaos stuff, there's orcs. You're on believe you're on a forge world, not a forge world. A hive world, or you're in like a hive city. I think no, you're on like you're on a Mechanicus forge world. That's what you're doing. The hive city, that was Space Marine 2, I think. Just walking around these really well captured environments, you know, even though the fact it's like a 2011 game, they really communicate the absolute scale of a lot of these locations really well. It's super cool to just walk around and kind of soak in the atmosphere. And the gameplay is just like straightforward third-person shooter. It's an extremely 7th gen third-person shooter, but while being a good game, if that makes sense. I would recommend it. It's not like the crustiest game ever, you know? You can still play it on PC without much hassle. It's on Steam already. But a little touch-up. Apparently it has a reworked interface. Fine. Okay, cool. And just like, you know, the quality of life stuff, more aspect ratios and support for other resolutions, more options, kind of modern graphic settings and sound settings and stuff like that. Sure, appreciated. An appreciated update to the original. I like the original Space Marine. I don't know if I would pay like full price for it, but if you could get it in a bundle or on a little bit of a sale, I think it's actually totally worth it. Just for the fact that it's like genuinely like 7 hours. It's a good 7 hours, but it's, you know, it's 7 hours. Maybe that doesn't bother you. And then Dawn of War. So I also really like the original Dawn of War. I never quite got super into Dawn of War 2, but I enjoyed the original quite a bit. This is, I would say, the first, not the first, but the first one I would point people to in terms of Warhammer RTS games. Dawn of War is a very classic, like I said, take this thing, make it Warhammer. Very classically styled real-time strategy game. You're dropped into a map. You build buildings, you collect resources, you amass a big army. There's all these ways to upgrade your units and your buildings and stuff like that. You can get bigger and bigger units and all that kind of thing. And then you take that and you slam it into your opponent on the other side of the map. It is personally, I find it very fun if that appeals to you. Dawn of War is just a really good one of those with all that Warhammer flavor, right? So what's really nice is that the definitive edition, as it's being called, comes with all of the DLC. There were 1, 2, 3, I think, main expansions. I believe 3 main expansions to the original game. So this is just coming with all of that, with just like up-res textures, modern resolution support, hopefully like equivalent modding support, because the mods are really cool for Dawn of War. And that's a really nice package. There are, I think in the final, like with complete, in the complete game with all the expansions, there's like, how many factions are there? There's probably like almost 10, maybe? There's like Marines, Guardsmen, Eldar, Orcs, Chaos Space Marines, Necron, Tau, Sisters of Silence, Drukhari. Am I missing one? I might be missing one. Or not. I don't remember. So there's like 9 or 10 factions that you can play as. And each of them basically has their own campaign. So the original Dawn of War has like one campaign, and then they expanded that to having... They gave additional campaigns for the other races, and then in the like second or third expansion, they also added this brand new, essentially grand strategy mode, which is like practically its own sequel, where you can take any of the races and they have their own storylines of why they're on this planet, and then you just wage war against the other ones, taking different territories, which are all like different maps and stuff like that, and you got different objectives. There's like special cutscenes and all that. It's really cool. It's a lot of content, and once you're done with all of that, there is just a ton of mods. Like, what is it called? I think the unification mod it's just like adding in like literally dozens of additional playable races from both the lore and the tabletop. It's really cool. So if you're curious and you haven't played it before, I would actually really recommend the Definitive Edition. It's a ton of content. If you like RTS games, if you like Warhammer, it's a really good deal, and you should totally check it out. Big recommend on that. Those were the main things that I wanted to give a shout out to. The other stuff is like little collaborations or minor like DLC for stuff. Darktide is getting the Arbites, which I think is actually really fun as a class. The Arbites, as an aside, the Arbites are essentially in 40k. They are like the planetary police, basically, and they're very Judge Dredd. That's a big inspiration for them. But they used to have models on the tabletop, and they kind of phased them out. Wait, do they have anything in Kill Team? There's a much smaller scale like side game for 40k called Kill Team, and they use it as an excuse to make like new miniatures and tabletop like playable rules for much more minor like factions or sub-factions. I think Arbites might actually be in there. I was really stoked that in Darktide they have included the Robo-Dog. That's one of the most fun parts of the Arbites to me, is they have these like robo-killer police canine units that are pretty cool. So yeah, that was Skulls. That's all the stuff that I would recommend. Bolt Gun 2, keep on the lookout for. Dark Heresy, looks cool. And then the remasters, I would definitely recommend those if those sound interesting to you. All right. So, there's this little game called Guilty Gear. Well, and it got an anime. Oh boy, did it. It got an 8-episode anime that recently wrapped up. And I want to talk about the anime, and I want to talk about the character it was essentially created to promote. So, Guilty Gear has, I think, they have, more than any other fighting game series, managed to more smoothly introduce a new generation, right? A lot of fighting games struggle with this when they try to advance the plot, and they have trouble. Kind of, Street Fighter is infamous for this, of essentially having like 2 or 3 goes at new protagonists and new generations. 6 has been the most successful so far, but it's been like a struggle. Soul Calibur has had this. Tekken kind of like flips its mind every now and again on like whether or not they really want to commit to a new generation outside of Jin, or like Julia or something. But Guilty Gear has been pretty solid with like introducing, and they've done it slowly. They have slowly passed the torch with various characters, right? So it was namely Sin. Sin is like the big one. He's introduced in Overture. His lore gets expanded a little bit in, I think, one of the other side games or something. He's a playable character in Exerd. And then in Strive, he's in there. And they're just kind of slowly passing the baton. Sin's had like 3 essentially games to work his way in and become what many people consider a well-liked mainstay on the roster. And Strive was basically the conclusion of the storyline that the series has had since its beginning. Soul is sort of in like a state of semi-retirement. He can kind of, that man has been taken care of for now. He doesn't really have to, like, most of his grudges are settled. He can just kind of like retire and be an inventor and occasionally be on call to handle some situations for the government. Kai, also in Strive's second story mode, abdicates the throne. He essentially retires from being king. After marrying Dizzy. And that's like him sort of also going into retirement. He's already basically in vacation mode in Strive. And so you're kind of left with, well, what is the next plot line? What is who's going to pick up the mantle? One of those is obviously Sin, the son of Dizzy and Kai. But they've introduced this new character, Unika, and no one knew anything about her. And the anime was meant to I guess promote her and be a sequel to Strive. So I'll start off talking about the anime, and then I'll talk about Unika because she literally just came out. So, is Guilty Gear Strive Dual Rulers good? It's a fighting game anime, and it's about as good as that would imply. It has a lot of, I would say I watched it as a Guilty Gear fan, and there is good stuff in it if you are a Guilty Gear fan. There's some nice moments between characters, there's some cool stuff, there's some interesting lore reveals, and there's some nice action occasionally when the budget allows for it. I would say as a Guilty Gear fan, it was perfectly fine for me to imagine this as a sort of truncated arcade mode. If that, like, to put this in the language of a truncated arcade mode. Because Dual Rulers is an interesting case study, and I think the difference between a story and storytelling. I would say that the story is perfectly fine. I actually like a lot of the character interactions. In pure bullet point form, it is what I would expect out of a Guilty Gear thing. It is sufficiently convoluted and silly. But the way that it is told is shoddy. A lot, you can feel the budget constraints. You can feel it. You can feel the waistband tightening on the budget all the time, every single episode. It is CG, and it uses the same models actually from the game, which I think is amazing that the models are that high quality. A lot of times you go into what I call concept art mode, which is where the whole background or an entire scene is like out of concept art, essentially, of just watercolor markers and still frames. Oh boy, do they love freeze frames. They love doing the thing where they have a completely still shot, but they quickly pan up 3 times in a row to imply more motion. There's a lot of cheating in the animation, let's say. The other thing that kind of wore on me a little bit as the series went on was it seems like they hate establishing shots. They hate them. Near the end, you start to get into like, I don't know where the fuck we are. I can kind of like intuit it, but it is really hard to understand where we are and what's going on. And was that a flashback, or was that just like a really weird hard cut kind of thing? As a Guilty Gear story, it's fine. It definitely feels like it needs at least 2 more episodes, especially knowing what we know now about Unika from her in-game moveset. Like, what the fuck? But I would say is, okay, if you don't know anything about Guilty Gear, I don't think it makes any sense to you. I don't know what you'd get out of it. There is very little explanation. They really try, like when a character shows up, to be like, here's like a brief rundown of this character, but it is not sufficient. This is a sequel. This is essentially Guilty Gear 5 or 4.5, depending on how you want to look at it. And if you don't have a decent amount of context of who these people are, none of this is going to make any sense to you, or is going to mean very much to you. Like, there's some really nice stuff. There's a wonderful little moment where Soul shows up at the end for Kai and Dizzy's official wedding, and they don't think he's going to show, but he does. And Soul has not seen Dizzy in quite a while, and he shows up to essentially his daughter's wedding, with his longtime, now kind of friendly rival. but longtime enemy. Like Soul and Kai used to fucking hate each other, and they kind of patched it up over the years. Is how their relationship has gone. But he doesn't like the idea of Kai being his son-in-law. But he shows up to their wedding, and there's a really sweet moment where Dizzy just can't control herself, and she runs up and hugs Soul, and she's like, "Dad, you came," and it's like, that's really sweet. I really like that. That feels like a nice payoff for these characters. For some reason, Testament is not at the wedding. Why? Really? What, were they busy in their immortal retirement? That feels like Darrow was at the fucking wedding. May is at the wedding. I guess because Johnny's there. Is Johnny there? I don't know. Fucking April's at the wedding. Why is April at the wedding? Oh, no, they would be at the wedding. Dizzy was part of the Jellyfish Pirates for a while. They would be, right? Why is Testament not there? Are you telling me that they're not going to show up for like for Dizzy? Do they? I'm literally trying to remember if they have a familial relation. No, but Testament was like Dizzy's guardian for like years. Testament was essentially Dizzy's caretaker for years, for quite a while. Weird that they would not be at the wedding. Especially when they show up in like little reference shots. They have like a couple cameos earlier in the series. It's weird that they don't show up. Minor gripe. This is just me being like a fanboy. I guess do you have to watch it? Not really. You can probably just look up. You can probably look up some of the fight. I won't call them scenes. I will call them shots. Because there's a couple of like, oh, that's cool to see the characters fight in like an anime, you know, in like a fight scene kind of thing. You can probably just look those up and read a plot summary of what happens, and we'll get to Unika. I'm just gonna spoil stuff because I don't think it's that necessary. Around episode 6 is when there are some interesting like lore reveals, but there's a lot of just like stuff is just happening now. We're here. The characters are doing this. And you just go, okay, fine. So Unika, what's her deal? This new mysterious girl. Okay. So, Unika's deal is that she is Dizzy and Kai's daughter from a bad future timeline. We're already very guilty here. And she has been sent back in time by the guy who raised her, who was a racist anti-gear politician named Nerval, in order to basically commit anti-gear terrorism and stir up conflicts between humans and gears. She has second thoughts about being a terrorist because she gets super gay for Bridget. That's like that's genuinely the plot point. She is so gay for Bridget that she's like, I am not racist anymore. I think I like this Chungus life. She also makes a connection with Sin, who is like also a command type gear, which he inherits that from Dizzy. And he like actually doesn't want to kill Unika, and you know he's like a loving, friendly guy, right? And Unika is kind of, she sees that she's been taught to have this very black and white worldview. Sin and Bridget kind of break that for her, and she starts to have second thoughts about what her purpose is. And then it turns out Nerval's like a piece of shit racist, and she understands that she was just a tool that was being used, and then she like joins the heroes and all that to go fight her adopted dad, who like turns into a fucking Cthulhu monster for some reason. It's very weird. They don't explain where the giant Cthulhu monster comes down from. It's just in the sky suddenly. There are some cool horror visuals in I like the last half of the final episode. There's some very cool horror visuals that are genuinely sort of disturbing. That just kind of came out of nowhere, but I thought it was neat. It is kind of funny because Nerval is still in the present, and he's like, yes, Unika came back from the future and told me that my future self told me that I had to prevent the Second Crusade from happening. and the only way to do that was to like do all this terrorism stuff. And then him doing that ends up starting. It was literally Nerval. Me from the past. Your current plan will cause the Second Crusades to happen. Don't do that. And then Nerval switches course in the present, and then doing that causes the Second Crusade to happen. And there's a moment where he goes, I know what I'll do. I'll go back in time and tell my past self that his current plan will cause the Second Crusades to happen. And you're like, dude, are you fucking stupid? And then his future self comes back and just fucking absorbs him for some reason, and then turns into a weird alien purple goop monster that can like infinitely regenerate itself. It's weird. It's odd. A lot of characters are used haphazardly, just sort of there. There is a really, I didn't catch this. I had to find this out from like Reddit comments, unironic Redditor reporting in. But like, there are two different timeline versions of Axel that show up. Of like, there's Strive Axel and current and like past Axel, and you can only really tell by the bandana color, which is very funny. Yeah, it's so Unika as a character is kind of like, we have these two new gen peoples, Sin and Unika, and they are both the children of Dizzy and Kai, Unika being from the bad future. And also, funny enough, she is technically Sin's little sister chronologically, but at the point she comes back in time, she is actually older than him in terms of years, which is sort of like a funny, cute, very Guilty Gear sort of detail. Weirdly enough, funny enough, I feel they're not quite perfect analogs for Sol and Kai, which I like. I like that they're not just, here's the characters again, but Unika is kind of the Guilty Gear. She is kind of the new Guilty Gear. She feels bad that she was used as a tool by someone else, and she's trying to like find her one way in life, or as Bridget puts it, find her shape. Meanwhile, Sin, so she's kind of, Unika is very serious, you know, her whole life has been very serious, and she now has this added guilt thrown on, so she's a slightly grim character. She's sort of like quiet, and I don't know quiet, but a little more stoic, and suppresses her emotions a little more. She's definitely like the more like quiet, cool type of character, whereas Sin is the big, bombastic shonen protagonist. And I kind of like their dynamic. I want to see them do more. Also, funny enough, based off of Unika's unique taunts, just in her taunts in Strive, she's also like a fashionista. She's like a fashion fan. A lot of her taunts are unique. She has a lot of unique voice lines in her taunts that are her critiquing or complimenting other characters' fashion choices, which I think is actually a fun little detail. Guilty Gear Guilty Gear has these very likable characters because Daisuke adds in all these tiny little things to them that really flesh them out. Like, it's wonderful that Testament is forklift certified and has like 20 different hobbies. And there's just little things like that. Like all the stuff of Chip being like a weeaboo and details that add this real charm to the characters. I've always liked that. And I think it's one of the reasons the characters are so beloved, is that Daisuke adds a lot of little quirks to them. So speaking about Unika in game, I think I should mention that there was a big leak. The day of her reveal, like her teaser trailer at EVO, where like multiple dev kits got leaked out, and Unika was like fully playable and done, and people were looking at her moveset and going, "Oh my god, this is this is." There's all these spoilers for her moves of things that she's totally gonna do in the anime, and then like a bunch of stuff that she does in game is not represented in the anime. and this is why I say the anime feels like it should have had 2 more episodes. Did you know the Thunder Seal is inside of her gun? What? I didn't know that shit. They never mentioned that. Unika's weapon is this big railgun thing that she can also use as like a bludgeoning weapon. And she just like uses it to shoot beams and stuff like that in the anime. She also has like these wings that she doesn't use in game. I don't think she has. She can go invisible, which she never does in game. She has these little guys that she can release, like these little snake things. Never does that in game for some reason. I don't know why there's all this stuff that she does only in the anime that is not represented in game. I don't know what the communication was like. But in her actual moveset, she has this mechanic called Arbalest mode, which is essentially, she has all these special moves that are essentially, she's like old Kai, but I would say probably a little bit heavier, maybe not quite as agile. So like she has a Greed Sever. She has, that's fun. I like that she has a Greed Sever. She has, what's his slide move called again? Why can't I remember what his slide move is called? Stun Edge? No, that's his projectile. She has the air projectile. She has the slide move. She's got a DP. She's just got like a very Kai moveset, but she has 2 different versions of all of her specials. If she cancels into them out of a particular like stance that she goes into, it's kind of Tekken-like. She goes into it off of certain normals, and I think she might just be able to trigger it with some command normal. But it's called Arbalest mode. So typically, for her the regular moves, it's like this black and red energy that's very reminiscent of the way that Sin uses his gear powers. So it's kind of implied that she is also using her gear power for those special moves. But for the Arbalest versions, they're like these white and blue lightning effects. And then you get to her her super. She has a crazy cool looking super. It's called Weapons Free. And she like opens up the entire gun, and the Thunder Seal is in it. Kai's sword. This super powerful weapon artifact is in the cannon. And you're like, oh, that's why you get these lightning effects, is she's literally using the Thunder Seal as a power source for her weapon and for her moves, which I think is actually a really cool idea. And I'm imagining it's because in that bad alternate timeline, Kai is like dead, and she takes the Thunder Seal. Never explained. Not in the anime. Why is that not in the anime? That feels like kind of a big deal. I guess there's just 2 Thunder Seals in the world now. So that's interesting. But she does have this really cool, she has like a Michael sword, I should say. That's like a classic. I feel like that's just inherited from Dizzy, inherited from Justice kind of thing. That's a fun detail to give her a Michael sword special. She gets like a Dizzy install, which is neat. I think that with that bloodline, all the characters should have an install of some sort. I just feel like that's necessary. Sin, unfortunately, does not really have one. She reveals just the sword, and she gets like long ass Dizzy hair that's like glowing blue-white glow like Dizzy's. And she gets a tail. She gets a dragon tail like Dizzy. And if she hits you, she like launches you up into the air. It's a very cool idea for a special. And she essentially goes into an extended special version of a dust combo where she can zip and zap all across the screen doing attacks and stuff. And then you can get a big finisher version of it if you do enough hits. It's a very cool special and really flashy. But you can only use it at low health. I think she looks pretty cool. She's just like another all-rounder character. I imagine she's going to be base roster in the next game. And I actually do like Unika. I think she's neat. I think it's funny that every time she's on screen, Kat and I get to call her the #1 chaser. Just like little things like that. I think she's I think it's nice to have her as a complement or a contrast to Sin. I like the little interactions they had in the anime after learning that they were siblings. And I don't know. I generally like her. She's not the some people aren't feeling her and like whatever. She's not the type of character that I think like completely steals your heart. Just because her being very charismatic is not part of her. It's not really part of her personality. But as a new addition to the core cast, I actually quite like her. I think she looks cool. Her gameplay looks cool. Haven't gotten a chance to play her yet. But yeah, I actually do enjoy Unika. Dual Rulers is, you can watch it for fun if you really want to, but yeah, the basic idea is Unika is future Trunks, and she becomes good because she realizes how awesome chasing is. Right, yeah. So that was the Guilty Gear news. Now I want to talk about some other stuff that I watched. The Lilo and Stitch live action remake. So, Katrina dragged me to this. She paid for my tickets, thankfully. So I can't be too mad. She is not, she's a Disney adult. And despite that, she has not made me watch any of the other live action remakes. The only reason she took me to this was because, Lilo and Stitch is like her favorite. It's like her favorite Disney movie. And she just had to go see it. I can't be upset too much. I can't be too upset because I'm going to do the same thing to her when that Street Fighter movie comes out. Because that's how I am. So, how would I describe Lilo and Stitch, the live-action remake? I would say the most interesting thing actually happened before we even watched the movie. We went in to the theater to reserve tickets early because it was actually the early preview screening, like a day before it came out. I think that they're dumb. I don't understand the, like, if the movie is, you can go buy tickets to watch it, how is it like a preview? The movie just comes out. The movie just came out. But no, the next day is when it actually technically is released into theaters. For some reason. Same thing with the Garfield movie that she took me to. So we went, because she was worried about the seats all getting filled up. We went to the theater early to reserve tickets. And as we're walking into the theater, there's one guy at the counter. He's an older guy. He looks like he's probably in his 60s or older. So immediately I'm thinking laid off. And I don't say that in a mean way. I mean, on some level, I am feeling a little bad because I'm like, this guy looks like he got laid off and he really does not want to be working at a movie theater when he's 65. So we walk up to the counter. There's a family behind us. And he seems a little stressed, the guy at the counter. He seems a little stressed, and he goes like, I'll be with you in a minute. I'll be with you in a minute, to the family walking in behind us. At the same time, another woman who I totally thought was with that family is walking just up the stairs of the theater into the, it's like on the theater's on like the second floor, right? The first floor is just the main lobby. She's walking up the stairs. And he calls out to her and he goes, "Excuse me, ma'am, you can't go up without a ticket." And she turns around and she fucking Dovahkiin Fusroda, "I'm the building manager." And he fucking ceased to exist. He got fucking obliterated. And he goes, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And she was wearing a name tag, so I'm inclined to believe her. But it was like, I wanted to turn to the family behind us and give a reaction shot, but I felt bad. I felt bad for him. So we get our tickets, and because it's like the early preview screening, whatever, we got an additional little care package that was just like a sticker sheet, but he pulls it out and it's this box that says "Do not open." Because I guess we were the first people there, They have the box open, I'm assuming, when the movie is actually seating to hand out to people. But because we were reserving our tickets, he just gave it to us early. So he he's like trying to open the box, and he just like grabs a pen, and there's like tape over the box, so he just stabs it, and this like really like it's really hard to describe the energy of the moment of him getting completely fucking obliterated by this woman, and then having to awkwardly slowly stab this box open with a pen, and then take out these 2 sticker sheets for us and say, gotta support the fans. So that was probably the most memorable part of the experience. The movie itself, I would say it is longer. It's longer than the original, and it uses more time less efficiently. There's a lot of odd alterations to the original that I think make the story slightly worse in weird ways. I can't claim to be an expert on Lilo and Stitch. Kat is. She knows the whole movie by heart, like scene for scene. I really only watched it once with her. She showed it to me. I'd probably seen it before when I was like a little kid, but I don't remember it very well. I've only really seen it once, and that was when she showed it to me. After we started dating. Okay. So, it's a very thin feeling movie. That's one of the best words I can use to describe it. It's very thin feeling. There's some weird alterations. Like, okay. So, the whole idea of the movie, there's only like a couple main points I have of ways that it's subtly worse than the original. But like the main movie is, the theme of the movie is the importance of sticking with your family, either blood related or not. I would say that's one of the main themes of the movie. And it's really odd in this remake that at the end, there's like a weird amount of undermining. Nani like lets Lilo, dude, okay, I really just have to talk about the ending. So in the original, the climax of the movie is, what order does that even happen in? The climax of the movie is the house getting destroyed, right? In this one, that same thing happens, but after the scene where they go surfing and Lilo falls off, Lilo and Stitch both fall off, and they almost drown. So Lilo goes to the hospital, and despite the fact that she has no serious injuries, might not have water in her lungs, doesn't need surgery, doesn't seem to need medication that they don't say that she does, the medical bills are going to completely bankrupt Nani. Which is like, because, they live in America with no universal health care. And they don't have health insurance. So the medical bills are going to wipe her out. And she is essentially forced to give Lilo up to the state, and they will cover the medical bills. Mind you, this is for a 2-day stay in the hospital. So there's like a lot of grim reality being here. And I think for a European audience, it might be very strange that like, this is just how it is here, this is fine. This is fine. Another 8 trillion to Israel. So, by the grace of God, there is a new character in this movie who is Daniel's mom. Daniel's like the surfer guy who's got a crush on Nani in the original. He's here, but he also lives next door with his mom, who basically is like Lilo's grandma. She's like a very surrogate mother aunt kind of figure for Lilo. And they are willing to adopt her after Nani gives Lilo up for into the system. And, I learned a lot of interesting history while looking at some thoughts about this movie. So, there is a long history in Hawaii of families being broken up because they quote-unquote can't, take care of their children adequately. And those children being shipped to the mainland U.S. and like only seeing their family occasionally. And it's pretty unfortunate and kind of ugly. And so for a Hawaiian audience, that plot point in the original is probably fairly resonant. That's like a thing that's happened over there. There's also the fact that, this was pointed out to me in like a comment, and I actually think it's very, very accurate, so I'm going to steal it. There's a running theme in the original film of people from outside of a certain culture or place making decisions about that culture and place, which is very reflective of Hawaii's actual history, being an island nation that we took by force via private military to serve the sugar industry. And then they're just part of America now. And we're gonna fuck with them a bunch. So like in the original, you have the character Cobra Bubbles. And he's like their main social worker. And he cares about Lilo. And he wants them to be happy. But he is also kind of imposing his own view of what a proper household is onto their family. You have the councilwoman, the alien councilwoman, who barely understands what Earth is, but is like imposing her own view of what has to be done from this very high up galactic politics perspective. Which from her point of view, she also thinks is the correct thing to do. You have Jumba, who doesn't really care about family. He just kind of cares about science and his work, and he's just going after Stitch for egotistical reasons. And he does not really respect Stitch for most of the movie as an intelligent, like sapient being, right? That deserves love or something like that. So you have all of these things of people doing what they think is right in their own mind without ever consulting the actual people that they are affecting and imposing their worldview on them, which again is fairly analogous to the history of Hawaii. So I find it really strange in this movie that they go with the angle that actually it's okay that these characters that Lilo gets given up. And like, okay, in the original, like that's literally the reason they use the word ohana. Like it's actually thematically important that they don't use the word family. They use the word ohana, the Hawaiian word from their own culture. That the center of the movie isn't just the idea of family, it's family through it's the Hawaiian cultural understanding of what family means and the responsibility you have to your family. There's a really weird scene. I saw a side-by-side earlier. There's a really weird scene when Lilo first brings Stitch home and Stitch is like making a mess and Nani wants to give him up. And that happens in the original, and in the original, Lilo basically says, no, ohana means family. It means no one gets left behind. No one gets forgotten. And Nani kind of has this like, ugh, you're right. And she says, I hate it when you use that against me. But she can't deny that that's what she believes in. That's what she believes in. And that's what she's taught Lilo. And Lilo is kind of, in that sense, sort of her center. Lilo is despite the fact that she drives her up the fucking wall, she still loves her sister more than anything, and Lilo is kind of like the center of her morality, you know? She's doing everything for her. In the original, I never noticed until I saw the side by side how strange of a decision it is to have Nani instead say that shit's not real and you need to live in reality, Lilo. It's just a very weird decision to make her come off as much colder and more cynical. It's a weird message to send to children. that like, actually, no, that's cute. And it makes me like her a lot less, right? Obviously, Nani is super stressed out in the original, but you can tell that she's going through a lot, and she's sticking with it because she cares so much about her sister. And it's just kind of weird to have this very cynical interpretation of her character in the remake. It feels almost like a very opposite version of her that I think sort of undermines that main theme. Like, I guess the idea is that Nani wavers in her own beliefs and that Lilo kind of brings her back around, but the way that they do it also sucks, because not just of the whole idea of giving her up to the state, but okay, so Nani has this whole thing about how, like, I'm never gonna be away from, like, I'm with you. I'm always with you. We're Ohana, right? We have responsibility to each other, and I'm gonna be here. I love you so much, Lilo, and I'm not gonna leave. And in the start of the movie, there is this piece of exposition delivered very clunkily by the grandma character, by David's mom, where they mention that Nani has been accepted into, I think, like, Duke or something twice, but chooses not to go because she wants to take care of Lilo, which, okay, that's like the sacrifice that she's making. She's like, so you're like, okay, Nani's willing to sacrifice part of her future to take care of Lilo. And then at the end of the film, she's got this whole thing about, I'm never going to leave you, or I'm always going to be here for you, Lilo. And then you get a montage, and she's just like, later, losers, I'm getting on a plane to go to college in the mainland US. And you're like, I literally turned to Kat and went, is she, like, leaving? What? Why? What? And it's made all the stranger because she's going for marine biology. And it's like, she lives in Hawaii? I shouldn't have to tell you this, but Hawaiian universities have pretty good marine biology degrees. It's almost like they're an island state surrounded by water, where that's kind of important to them. Why does she have to go overseas to study? I understand that, like, whatever it might be a good school, but if you want to go for marine biology, it's pretty realistic to study in Hawaii, maybe on one of the other islands, right? But it's not that far. Like, you can take probably like a ferry over, I'm assuming, in like a few hours and be back on wherever Lilo is. Like, study and then get a job in marine biology at a museum or as a researcher or something, and literally never have to leave Hawaii. It's super weird. And I don't understand why they did that. It felt like a victim of a rewrite, like something that got left in a draft. There's this they kind of try to make it smooth it over by saying that now she has this portal gun that she got from Jumba that lets her visit Lilo anytime, which, by the way, is not how the gun was shown to have worked before. They show that gun working, which is new. It's a new element, as it can, like, open up a portal between the two sides of, like, a wall or a surface, and it can also open up, like an aperture science portal gun, but you got to shoot both portals. She just, like, opens it. Wait, do they have two? I don't even remember. It feels weird. It feels weird. Cobra Bubbles. Okay, Cobra Bubbles, I think, is a good example of the ways that the transition to live action really diminish the impact of a lot of things. In the original film, Cobra Bubbles was he had this big physical presence, not just through his voice, but because of, like, his build and his posture and the way that he was shot and this sort of exaggeration in just how large he was. I remember that. Like, he's this imposing character. And the live action Cobra Bubbles is like just a regular guy. They got like a very normally proportioned guy, and he never feels like a big deal. He does not have an eighth of the on-screen presence that the animated version had. There's also a lot of, I don't know, the visuals of Lilo and Stitch, the original, are very like warm and tropical to me. And the live action, just by being shot on digital, even with a little bit of color correction, just feels a lot colder and less lively. And it has the environment, the setting of Hawaii has much less presence on screen in the remake, which I think is a bit of a bummer. There's a lot of other little things. They don't have Lilo get antagonized quite as much, and they also like make it another Hawaiian girl, which I think is interesting. I don't know if that was like, I don't know if that, because in the original it's like a white girl. It's like a little white girl named like Myrtle or something that Lilo beats the shit out of, but they make it a little Hawaiian, a little brown Hawaiian girl. And Lilo doesn't beat the shit out of her. She just like pushes her over. And that was, in my mind, I was like, are they like radioing it? Are they like, uh-oh, what if there's a racial implication? I don't want, we can't have our little Hawaiian girl get bullied by a white girl. You know? Just pure speculation on my part. It could have just been a casting thing. Who knows? I think it's kind of the way that Jumba and Pleakley are handled is a little lame. They are portrayed by their actual actors for most of the film because they use these hologram things to like disguise themselves as Zach Galifianakis and the other guy whose name I can't remember. That's a pretty obviously a budget thing to me. But it is sort of funny that in doing that, they completely remove Pleakley's cross-dressing thing from the original. They sort of have him wear kind of feminine clothes in the remake. Not nearly as blatant as like Pleakley's wearing a wig and lipstick and a dress. Which it's very funny. I like the way Kat was watching some of the animated series, which is it was a fun show. It's a fun show. She was watching some of the animated series, and I thought in the original the sort of gag, I guess, it's not quite a joke. Like, it's not supposed to be that funny. I think that Pleakley like wears women's clothing, but it's based on the idea that he's an alien and he doesn't understand human 21st century gender norms, right? So to him, it's just human clothes, and he doesn't quite see a notable difference. But in the animated series, he literally is just wearing like dresses and wigs and makeup all the time. They just really leaned into that, which I think is kind of fun. But for the most part, they are just Zach Galifianakis and the other guy. Galifianakis feels a little bit. Can't use the word miscast. I would say maybe misused. Although I totally see where she's coming from. He does not do the Russian accent. Why? I don't know. Is it because of Ukraine? I don't know. But he's very serious. Like, I get that Galifianakis tends to have... He's not like a goofball comedian. He's like a kind of dry comedy straight comedian. Straight man comedian. Where that's more of his style. You know, he's playing it straight. But Jumba is not given a lot of like humorous stuff to do in this movie that really complements his style of comedic acting. And I like Zach Galifianakis as an actor. I like a lot of his characters. He's just, they don't give him a lot of funny stuff to do, which, I mean, Pleakley was always sort of the goofball of the two, right, in the original. And he does, I think his actor does like a decent job, actually. I thought he was kind of enjoyable in this. Still can't remember his name. They completely take out the whale guy, the shark giant whale guy, who's, I forget his name, Matagu, something like that. They completely take him out, perhaps for budget reasons. This was originally a Disney Plus, going to be a Disney Plus original that they decided to release theatrically. And you can tell, that's probably, I mean, that's almost assuredly why Jumba and Pleakley are in their human forms for most of the movie. But they completely take out the whale guy, which, and they make Jumba the main villain, which I think is also kind of missing the point, because in the original, Jumba is like this cold, very science-oriented character who only really cares about his work and his ego and doesn't really care about other people. And by the end of the movie, he slowly starts to learn the value of Ohana. He learns the message of the movie. He learns the moral of the film. And it's nice to have a character like that who is not, there's characters in the movie like Lilo and Nani who are completely in that camp. There are characters who don't believe in that, and they don't understand or they don't believe in the message of the film, like Whale Guy or whatever, the councilwoman for most of the film. And it's nice to have Jumba as this character who starts off one way and then transitions over into being kind of getting it. Not like completely, doesn't do a full 180 flip, but he starts to understand the value of connections with other people and the Ohana thing, right? Here, he is just a villain. He is just a villain who doesn't give a fuck, and there's no lesson that he learns. And he's the one who, like, rips the house apart with his brand new Aperture Science portal gun. Again, that's why I say it feels thinner. Like, it's longer, and it's I've been comparing it to the original a lot, and that's because there are many remakes that I think can stand on their own and that you can talk about, sure, compared to the original, but there are many that you can talk about as their own thing. This remake, and I imagine most of the live-action remakes, are so close to the original that the stuff that they do that is different are just like these little aberrations that make the film subtly worse. So you're just kind of watching a slightly worse version of the film you already know. So it's hard not to compare it. I think on a technical level, the film also has very... how do I say this? It has very unmotivated directing and editing. I remember there's like one random moment where there's a 2-second POV shot that reveals nothing to the audience, like gives no information, and then is just over. And that felt like a really strange editing choice. It felt kind of random and like they needed to fill time between shots to like merge two things together in the editing room. That's what that came across as to me. Just really like weird. I don't know. It felt rushed, but not as much was happening. Like the stuff that was happening wasn't as meaningful. That's kind of the whole movie. Again, a film that uses more time less effectively. I mean, they took out the whale guy. I say the movie feels thin. They took out the whale guy, and they took out that hot lifeguard chick. So all I'm saying is there's a lot of blubber missing from this film, which contributes to the thinness. But that's Lilo and Stitch, the live-action remake. I would say just watch the original. It's still good. Still good. I think this movie made me appreciate the original a lot more. So yeah. Lilo and Stitch. Guys, it might be Lilover. And then finally, I'm going to talk about Thief. I finished Thief. I shared some thoughts on it when I first started playing the first couple missions. And now having finished it, I want to talk about my overall thoughts on the game. So, Thief is a game that is hard to go into with no expectations. I try to go into games, I try to meet as much art. Whenever I experience some kind of piece of art, the music or a movie or a game, I try to approach it on its own terms. And just what is it presenting to me and how do I respond to that? And I try not to let outside influences kind of color my perception or my expectations. I try to go in with no expectations of stuff. And I find that I have a better time overall doing that, right? I find that it's easier to appreciate pieces of art when you take that approach. Thief is a game where it's hard to do that because, I mean, just looking up discussion, you find so many people calling it one of the best games ever made. A lot of people call it the best game ever made. So having finished it, and mind you, I did play Thief Gold, which is the updated re-release that adds 3 new levels and a couple little gameplay tweaks. But for the most part, the big additions are the levels. How do I feel about it? How do I feel about it? And I think I want to say my opinion is formed without all of that, outside talk kind of coloring my perception. So how do I feel about Thief? Is it one of the best games ever made? I would say no. I would say no. In fact, I find it kind of overrated. I hate to say it, Thief fans, but I was looking through, once I was done with the game, I was looking through the list of levels and tallying up how I actually felt about each one of them. And it kind of dawned on me, man, I think like 60% of this game is kind of bad. Your mileage may vary, but man, like at least a third of this game kind of sucks, in my opinion. And more than that, in my opinion, an extra 20%, or no, did I say 30? Whatever I said. More than that is at like just kind of mediocre. There are some great levels in this game. There's some great levels in this game, and most of them are front-loaded. The classic curse, The first part of the game is the best part of the game. But I was just looking through, and I can go through every level right now. Taking out the tutorial and like the sort of bonus joke level that they added at the end. Lord Bafford's Manor, like it. Break from Crag's Cleft Prison. I like it. Down in the Bone Horde, I liked it well enough. Assassins, liked it. Thieves Guild, one of the new levels from Gold, did not like it. That's the one that took me 2.5 hours, and I got very confused. Very aimless, wandering feeling level. A running theme that I found is I did not like the levels where it felt like you could take one wrong turn and be lost for 20 minutes and have no idea where to go. I much prefer the levels that are either basically like Down in the Bone Horde, I thought was one where, it's not quite, there's not much stealth, but at the very least, it's pretty clear where you're going, with just a little bit of exploration. And my favorite levels were the ones where there were interesting, interconnected areas to explore, and the more that you explored, you just kind of naturally came across progress. Those were the best designed ones, such as The Sword, one of my favorite levels. Very well regarded level, apparently, among Thief fans. Really cool. Starts off one way, kind of transforms into something that feels like just like a whoa. There's a whoa moment in there where it seems like a normal one of these mansion levels, and then it gets weird, and I really liked it. So the Thieves Guild before it, just a lot of wandering and like trying to find my way around, going the wrong direction for like an hour and a half. Let's see. The Haunted Cathedral, another kind of wandering level I wasn't a big fan of. The Mage Towers, another new level from Thief Gold. Should be a cool manor level, but ended up with a lot of wandering. I actually didn't mind a lot of the level. I just found that the fact that you're supposed to go through like the exterior entrances to the towers was not clear to me at all through these very samey looking outside areas where it's hard to even find like where you're supposed to go first. Not a fan of the mage towers. Lost City, also not a fan of it. Another just wandering level. Song of the Caverns, the final new level from Thief Gold. I was kind of gritting my teeth expecting I read Caverns, and I was like, oh man, it's going to be another one of these. And no, it's actually probably one of the best levels. It is super cool. It switches up after the first little segment, and then it turns into a really cool, I guess like spoilers, but you kind of expect that out of this podcast. Turns into a super cool stealth sneaking thieving mission around an opera house. Great setting. I loved all the locations with cool settings. That was like a big part of a lot of my favorite levels. Really liked Song of the Caverns. Undercover, kind of neat, but also sort of fails in conveying what you're supposed to do. Like, don't know how I would have figured out how to actually get the talisman at the end without a guide. Like, you're supposed to just know that there are 5 switches hidden around, and like, I couldn't even find the easy one. Maybe that's because I'm blind, but I just completely missed it. There's 5 switches, and you're supposed to flip them within a minute of each other, or else the gate at the end doesn't open. And then there's like a magical seal around the talisman, and you have to know that this one and only time in the game, you're supposed to pick up a scroll from the corner of one room and then take it to the talisman and open up the scroll in front of it and then close out, and then the magical seal will be broken. How the fuck was I supposed to figure that out? Just like poor... Maybe there was some clue, but that felt like very poorly conveyed to me. I probably would have been stuck on that forever. But like most of the gameplay through that level is kind of cool. I like the idea of being undercover and not trying to rouse suspicion amongst the enemies. Return to the Cathedral. First half is a really cool horror atmosphere, actually doing stealth around the undead zombie enemies, which is pretty neat. Second half was fucking asinine, and I ended up using a cheat to skip the level. After you collect the eye, which is like the item for the level, every single enemy gets alerted and is just running around trying to catch you, and you have to do 7 different tasks for a ghost guy in order to open the exit. And while you are being constantly hunted by enemies that you basically cannot kill. You can kill them, but with how fast they move, like especially the skeleton guys, you only have so much holy water to apply to your water arrows. It's a timed buff, and it's so difficult. It's such a fucking nightmare. I was like, fuck this. I don't want to do this. I'm not doing this. Escape, terrible level. I hate Escape. Escape's terrible. I don't even want to talk about it. It's just running and aggroing enemies. You cannot stealth. There is no thieving. It's just really lame and stressful and annoying. Strange Bedfellows. Okay level. Lot of darkness. It's fine. Into the Maw of Chaos. It's okay. It's just a straight shot. It's fine. And I just tally up my thoughts on all these levels, and I'm like, damn, like, of the 15 levels, I think there's like 6 good ones that I would actually like to play again. The other ones I find mediocre to like really unenjoyable. And I feel like Thief is a situation where the developers didn't quite understand what the best part of their game was while they were making it. Because if they did, they didn't know how best to implement it. Like, the foundation, I love the mechanics, right? I love the mechanics of sneaking and having these different walk speeds. I love how important the sound is as you're walking, the sound of your footsteps, and how it changes based off of different surfaces that you're walking on. You really it forces you to pay very close attention to your environment. I liked how you could modulate it with like the moss arrow that makes certain patches of ground silent. I really enjoy. I do like games with a heavy emphasis on stealth and thieving and lockpicking. That's very cool to me. And I think in its best levels, Thief is a really engaging game where it's fun to explore. It's fun to sneak around and kind of fly by the seat of your pants throughout the more difficult areas, where you're just ducking in and out and barely missing line of sight with enemies and all the guards. It's really cool. And at its worst, it's just kind of like, oh, fuck, I gotta fight these monsters. This kind of sucks. Apparently, Thief was intended to be much more of an RPG with a dark fantasy setting, and then they had to scale that down during development into a mission-based game focused largely around the thieving. And so I kind of think that some of the levels that I don't like, some of the bigger, more open ones, sort of feel like remnants of when it was more of an RPG. Sometimes it helps because the levels feel like they have an impressive scale, like Assassins, which is a level where you're just trailing these two assassins throughout a city, without being noticed. And it's like a big it's like a 2-3 minute walk to get to where they're eventually going, and then you break into that house, and it's really cool. And it feels like you're actually going through a city. Apparently Thief 2 was built from the ground up with the stealth gameplay in mind. And so I'm actually very much looking forward to getting around to Thief 2 at some point, because I just think in a lot of ways Thief 1 kind of drops the ball. And if you asked me if I wanted to replay it, maybe a couple levels, but just most of the game I don't like. And I cannot in good conscience say it's one of the best games ever made if like 2/3 of the game is not great to pretty bad. So that was unfortunate. It definitely made me appreciate Dishonored a lot more. Because I don't think there's a single bad level in Dishonored. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Thief. A little disappointed with it. A little disappointed. And with that, I think I'm going to bring this to a close. If you've been listening this far, thank you for listening to me ramble. If you have a question, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, and I will get to it next time. But please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. I have been Tygan, hopefully going to get the video out by the end of the month, or just about. You can check me out on Patreon and my Coffee, my other channels, main channel, yada yada. Goodbye.